then how much more will God be for us? Amen?
Amen.
That's the theme of the whole book of Hebrews, by the way. The first Bible study I ever did here. The whole theme of the Bible, of the book of Hebrews, is the Old Testament is good, Jesus and his covenant is better. It's good. It saved their souls in the Old Testament. Did it save Noah? Yes. Did it save Abraham, David, Moses? Yes. It was good. But Jesus is better. So much better. Far better. The richness, the depth, the love that's been poured out from the cross to us, that we receive through the sacraments of the church. Oh, it's so great. Oh, the deep, deep love of Jesus. Vast, unmeasured, boundless, and free. Rolling as a mighty ocean. In its fullness over me. That's the image that we have now of the love of God. How big was the ark?
450 feet.
450 feet by 75 by 50, yes. Given our measurements, in terms of biblical measurements, it was all in cubits. Cubits. Now, why is that important? Who cares? Well, that is a good point. If this is just a fairy tale, a legend, a fable, a myth, why have such an unusual detail? And the type of detail, when compared to modern shipbuilding, is very accurate as far as its sustainability. The ark was a very stable, barge-like vessel. It wasn't a pleasure ship. It wasn't like the QE2 or the Titanic. It was meant to hold a bunch of animals and 8 human beings. Well, it did its job. It did its job, and it didn't sink. It had a stability about it that was incredible when looked at in terms of modern shipbuilding. Like I said, if I'm not mistaken, it had a 6-to-1-to-1 ratio, if I understand it correctly. If I understand it. Very stable, seaworthy vessel. Now, we're getting to these questions. How in the world did all the world's animals get on the ark? How could Noah care for them all? I mean, it takes a whole bunch of people running the LA Zoo just to feed and clean and all of those animals. How could 8 people care for all of the world's animals? And where did they get all the food? And what about dinosaurs? How do they fit into this? Where do they come in? Because we saw on the video last week, you know, the replica that's built in Kentucky. The evangelical Christians imply, and that's exactly what they're doing, they're implying that at the time of Noah, these animals still existed. Brontosaurus, Stegosaurus, all these dinosaurs lived and were on the ark. Well, if they were on the ark, where are they now? What happened to them? And if they weren't, then how do they fit into the story of Noah to begin with? How does this all fit together? Okay? And before we even do that, did the flood cover the whole earth, or is it just the local thing?
Whole earth.
There is a big debate amongst theologians when looking at the story of Noah. Was this just a local legend, a local story, a local version of the tale that's told around the world of a flood. And if it did happen at all, it was just a local thing. You know, there was a big flood in the Mediterranean Valley, and, you know, that's that. You know, a lot of people look to the Black Sea. Apparently, where the Black Sea is today, they speculate that thousands of years ago it wasn't there, and that whatever caused the Black Sea to form might have been the basis of this story of Noah. But again, it's very small and very, what they call local. It didn't envelop the whole earth. Then there are others, predominantly evangelical Christians, I will say, that believe that no, the story is very clear. It covered the whole earth. Well, if it did, then where's the evidence for that? Well, my answer is, if you think it's just a local story, then where's the evidence for that? And how come the whole world has a flood story? If it was just a local, you mean all of them had just little local floods? If you think of it that way, then adding up all the local floods makes one great big flood. You know what I mean? If you think of it that way, okay, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the story of the Hindus, the story in the Aztec culture, the story in the Native American culture, all of them have this story of the whole earth being destroyed by the flood, one couple surviving or more, with the animals, and they replenish and start the earth over again. Every culture has that basic theme in their story. It's a bit different. The characters and the reasons why is different, but the fact that it is a universal myth, as anthropologists would describe it, and folklorists would describe it. The fact that it's a universally told tale says, why? Why? Why does everyone have this idea of the flood? Why isn't there a story of the gods destroying the earth with snow or with fire? You know, they burn the earth and someone survives and starts. Why a flood? Why is it always a flood? And the survivor is someone on a boat that saves everything. You know? There isn't a similar type of universal story told in all mythologies, other than similar type creation myths. You know, like an original couple and like Pandora and Epimetheus. You know, I think of Greek myths. You know, the gods fashioned a perfect man and a perfect woman, and they gave him this box, and they said, don't open the box. And what does Pandora do? Open the box and release all the evils in the world. You know, that kind of story. That's a similar motif you see in all over the world as well. It's called the one forbidden thing motif. I mean, you see it in modern stories like Bluebeard, you know, don't open that closet. And what happens is they open the closet and she finds the bodies of all the dead wives that Bluebeard had, and so she joins them, you know. So one forbidden thing, and as long as you don't do the forbidden thing, you're fine. The minute you do, something terrible happens. I mean, Adam and Eve all over again, right? So we have, ethnologists and mythologists have noted this for centuries, that there are these common themes in stories told all around the world. They're similar, but they're slightly different. And they've recognized this. And so there are certain things that are just universal throughout the world. And that's always puzzled scientists. It's like, why are these universal themes always told around the world for people that didn't have any contact with each other, that we have any true evidence of? Because there's only two possibilities. One, there was one original story that was just dispersed around the world, and that these are just telephone iterations of it. You know, I tell Connie, Connie tells Hendrika, Hendrika tells B, B tells Tony, and you know, by the time it gets to Chris, it's a completely different story. Okay? Well, that's one idea of how things get changed as it passes through the eons. But there was one original story. That's one theory. The other theory, which is a little bit more esoteric, for a lack of a better word, is one that was proposed by Carl Jung, the psychologist. And he said that these stories come out of our own psyche, that these are just part of our psychological makeup, and they appear in our dreams and our myths because they are reflections of our unconscious selves. And that's why these themes are all over the world. It's because we are all the same type of people, and we all have the same kinds of impulses. So it would be surprising that the Aztecs develop a flood legend in the same time that the Mesopotamians do, and even though they had no contact with each other. So that's the other type of theory that explains this. Okay? Because there is only two ways you can explain these commonalities of story motifs around the world. It's either that there was one real event that people are trying to remember in their own way, or people are just all the same around the world, and these are just psychological reflections of that. Okay? Now, I would be the one to say, I think there's a common story or experience here that is being dispersed. And if that's the case, then we need to take the flood story a little bit more seriously than we thought. It can't simply be simple mythology. It can't simply be a fanciful moral tale in our Bible. Because if it is, then everyone else around the world is thinking the same thing. And what's the likelihood that everyone's going to be thinking the same type of theme? Not likely. Then the only other explanation is that there was a common experience. And if it's a common experience, then that means that there's a reality that there is to the flood story that is being presented. Doesn't that echo what Pius XII said, though? The first 12 chapters of Genesis are real history, but are told in a poetic manner. So we're kind of back to that idea. Okay? So, well, if the flood, the sub-question would be, if the flood really happened, then why isn't it in our history books? Because our history doesn't want to speak about that. Because if it does, then it has to face up to the reality that maybe the Bible is correct in some fashion, and we can't accept that. Not since the Enlightenment, not since the scientific revolution. We can't accept that. What do you mean we can't accept? I mean, we can't accept that. It's as simple as that. We just can't accept that. It's not scientific, it's not provable, it's mythology. We just ignore it and we move on. That is the modern scientific approach to this whole idea. You talk to anyone in academia and say, did the flood really happen? And they'll just laugh at you. Laugh loudly and point at you. That's what they will do. They will do that. Because it's just absolute nonsense to even consider the possibility. It just is. It just is. Okay? Why? Because it doesn't fit our secularist mindset that our academics have accepted as just a given fact. There is no God, there are no miracles, there is nothing like that, so let's just stop pretending that we believe in this phony baloney nonsense and speak about real facts. Okay. More likely the facts I want you to think about is more accurate. Okay. And you're stupid if you don't think like I do. Regardless of the evidence. And hopefully I'm going to present some of that evidence that suggests that there's more here to this story than a nice, fanciful, moral lesson to be learned. That there's some reality to it that makes you go, And because if there's a reality to it, then if God destroyed the world once with a flood, then maybe he'll bring judgment on the earth again, this time with fire. Oh, well, why did God bring the flood the first time? Because people had no faith and they were wicked. Well, maybe we should reform our lives so we don't offend God. That's a good idea, my pretty. And your little dog, too. By the way, doesn't that sound a little bit, not the my pretty part, but that whole idea of reform your lives and stop offending God, doesn't that sound like somebody we know? Who? Like Our Lady of Fatima, maybe? Go like this.
Yeah.
Yes, Our Lady of Fatima appeared during World War I, and she said, pray the rosary and stop offending God, for he's already deeply offended. Well, my heavens, if he was deeply offended in World War I don't even want to know what he's thinking now. Right? Right?
Right.
So if we're worried that we're offending God, and the last time God got too offended, according to the story of Noah, that he brought a flood, then maybe we should heed Our Lady's warning so that we don't offend God? Yes. Okay, so again, what is the relevance of even studying this story of Noah? I'll tell you what it is. The minute that the world stops having faith in God is the minute we need to really worry, because then the judgment will fall on this world. And the judgment will fall this time on this world in the form of an Antichrist who will lead many astray and down the paths into destruction. God will finally say, fine, you don't want to follow me, then follow the devil. See how well you get from him. That's what that amounts to. Why does God permit the Antichrist to come? It's because he gets sick and tired of people rejecting him in all of his grace and mercy. Then he finally says, fine, you don't want to follow me? Follow the other dude and see how far you get with him. But I've got news for you. That's only going to last 3.5 years tops. It's only going to last 3.5 years tops, because the world will degenerate so fast and be destroying itself